want to let you know we did update the amount of funds included for the upgrade to the sound system for the gymatorium, and they are primarily to be able to support the musicals. The wireless microphones are a big component of that overall cost. The rest of these are all the same as previous. And then we did, one of the things that we also are looking at is we are adding an additional section of kindergarten, and we are going to be reworking some of the furniture in the 4th and 5th grade classrooms and reallocating furniture. But we have an allocation in the budget for next year for $30,000 for classroom, primarily chairs and desks. So we do have a slight adjustment in the transportation amount from previous presentations, primarily because we have one less special education run that we have to make next year. We are going out to bid probably within the next month or so. We'll be letting out a bid for transportation for next year. The contractor that we have currently was not willing to renew the contract based upon the inflation number that's included as a part of the state's ability to roll over existing contracts. So we are going to put this out to bid. We're going to make a 1-year award, and depending upon how that first year goes, we will ask the public to allow the district to do a multi-year contract for the subsequent years. So hopefully the safe harm list does go away. The latest information that we have is the legislature is meeting tomorrow to extend the budget one more time till sometime next week, and then hopefully they can potentially adopt a budget there. And it looks like the safe harm list is going to be put back in, but we don't have that officially, so we're just using the existing amount that we have from the governor's original proposal. The only thing that does is essentially you would have more funds available next year than forecast. So these are all existing from previous. So we are asking to extend the multi-year tuition contracts. And Haldane, I don't know if we'll probably discuss that at some other point. Yeah. So these are all information from previous presentations. We have a change in the capital tax, the capital component, so the exclusion amount of the tax cap, and that's because we're doing a transfer to capital to cover the gym group. The tax, we are at the cap, 4.4%. That's not requiring an override, it's just a simple majority. This is the revenue that we had forecast versus what we actually got. So for the current year, we had forecast 947. We actually got 1,050,000, and then next year it is supposed to be 832,000 if the governor's proposal goes through. We think that is going to be put back, but we are using the budget draft that we have. So we don't need the use of any reserves, but you might remember the last couple of years we did spend down a number of our reserves. So the finance committee is going to be looking at the possibility of replenishing some of those reserves before year end. Notice on the agenda tonight is the property tax report card. And you can see on the property tax report card in some ways that that's probably going to happen. These are estimates based upon what would happen if we did use the fund balance. We did have a larger amount from fund balance that we needed to put for the current year's budget, but we did have a number of additional grants and some additional changes in special education placements, which allowed us to have a better forecast for the current year. And this is the proposed budget in its main components. And the biggest, percentage changes there are due to the additions to the facilities components, the sign, the contract for HVAC, the number of items there, and then the interfund transfers is the transfer to capital that's covered. So one of the things that we want to really highlight as a part of this budget is that roof. It is original to the middle school, and by including it into the budget, we avoid financing expenses. So we did some projections as to if we decided to finance $250,000 to do this roof and put out a bond for it, based upon the interest rate that a district this size and this with this level of capital, we would probably end up with a 4% rate on that bond, and that on a project this size would be $40,000. That's an interest expense. So if we do it as a transfer to capital, we avoid paying that interest expense. And we do have active leaks in this shingle component. So the main gym section is the roof that we're looking at replacing. And you can see we've got leaks into the building. We have applied for a grant with the help of Dana Levenberg, and we anticipate that the district would get $125,000 to help support that grant, to help support that installation of the new roof. And that's great because normally we would only get 10% building aid. So when you would do a project out of every dollar, you get 10 cents back from the state, but with this, we'll get half of it back. So that's very good. So it's another advantage of doing the roof this time, this way. And then this is a maintenance item, but it's something that has to be done by a specialized contractor, which we'll probably bid out for this, to refinish the floor to the base wood, put on new coating, put on graphics and lines, and put on a top coat. Whoever wins the bid for this, we would ask them to propose artwork that the public would get to weigh in on and make sure that they're excited about the artwork. This is the budget in the three components. The primary component is the program component, which is what you want. That is the teaching of the children. So that's the cost of that. And then you have the administration of the district, and the capital component is the physical plant and transportation. So we think Save Harmless will be restored. So this is still unknown, but we do have, we've gotten a lot closer. You could always have someone move into the district, and we do have to have placeholders in the budget for that, and we do. But that is something that has a big effect. So the district must allocate $902,000 of undesignated fund balance to stay within the cap. We have that available. If the budget is voted down on the 21st, the board can either adopt the contingency budget, or they can prepare a new budget. Contingent requires 0% tax increase, and it requires elimination of all equipment that's essential, except for the stuff that's essential to protect property, or special education, those two items. So that would eliminate the classroom furniture, the stage sound system, the biodigester, the art installation project, the school sign, all those things. You would have staffing cuts that would affect both program and administration. And the district would have to remain under the administrative cap, which the administrative cap is the amount of the administrative component of three components of the budget. The administrative component divided by the administrative plus the program component. That ratio percentage has to be under the cap, which is the lesser of last year's budget or the last defeated budget. And we would have to eliminate two positions, which would basically mean you wouldn't be able to do the two sections of kindergarten. And you would not be able to do the replacement of the gym roof, which you would lose out on that grant. So the first proposition is the budget amount. And then you have the individual contracts for the high schools, so Haldane and Highland Falls. And then the fourth proposition is just to allow continuous voter registration. Currently, the voter registration is only on two specific dates in the school year, and we have the capability to be able to do this on every day, and it will make it more convenient for people to be able to register to vote every day want to during normal office hours. So these are the important dates that are left. Board candidate petitions are due on the 22nd. And then we have the hearing on the 8th. The newsletter goes out shortly after that. And then on Tuesday, May 21st, we have the vote here in the gym. Any questions?
Last chance, go for it, Jessica.
Okay, I have a question that's related to the budget, but also broader. So, I mean, I brought it up, I was talking to Sarah about it. So I've seen in the local papers, I've seen it in town council meetings in Phillipstown, many folks suggesting that when a property gets removed from being a property tax paying property, and then it becomes like maybe owned by a nonprofit, say that there's a reduction in the amount that property will pay in property tax. But there's kind of a story brewing that it also means that the poor students of Garrison will get less money. And I just want to make sure that, so this is my 5th budget, by the way, everyone. So I think I finally get it, that for the fire chief and all the people who are volunteering with EMS and fire services, the veterans, the seniors, and not say nonprofits who pay less in taxes, farmers who pay less in taxes, all these people who pay less in property taxes. It doesn't reduce the amount that the school can collect. It just shifts the burden around to other property taxpayers.
That's 100% correct. You've got it. Yes. So essentially, if there's two things at work there. As far as the exemptions and any items that might change, the district doesn't have a say in what that is, but the district sets the levy.
Right.
So the levy just gets reapportioned to what's left. So really, it has no bearing on the school district. It does have bearing on what your individual tax rate may be. If there's a large number of properties that come off of the rolls, it will have a bigger effect on your individual bill than maybe our budget stuff will. So it depends on how big the properties that come off are in comparison to the overall levy and the overall tax base.
So talk me down from this, because I was like, I am writing a letter to the editor that explains how this works, because I finally get it. as a fifth-year veteran now on this, but also I want to make sure folks understand as well. So just talk me down. I don't have to do that, but I'm glad that we get to bring it up here. And I don't know if there's any other way we can explain it.
I will say, all right, I'm gonna jump in here.
Yeah.
As a practice, I don't think it's great for individual board members to send letters to the editor, which I think we've just asked, because we only have power when we're convened, like in this room, the seven of us together in this meeting.
Oh, I would write it as an individual. just so
Exactly, but
everyone knows.
it can sometimes muddy the lines. However, I'm also aware that, while it saddens me, not everyone in the community tunes in regularly to these meetings or shows up. So this is not on CTV. We're not trying to make it that way, just to be clear. But I am curious, is there's another way we can really clarify that? Because I think it does take, it's something that's a little challenging to understand. You have to spend some time with it, but and maybe people need to hear it different ways. I don't know. I thought the way you explained it, and the way Joe's been explaining it, is like the pie. What the pie is, the pie, and how it's divided up is based on what properties are there, is a really good way. So I would like to hear from other people if we think this is a moment to say, okay, let's send out a letter to the editor just to clarify that this will not impact us. Or is there another way? Is there something?
So I don't think that the full board is going to do it. I get that. And I won't do it as a road taxpayer in Garrison. But I do wonder if for future budget presentations, that maybe you do a good job in the beginning of explaining how it happens, right? But I don't know, can we have a pie up there that just shows something?
Yeah, we can, when we do the budget, what's it called?
Newsletter?
No, not the newsletter, the hearing.
Yeah.
When we do the hearing, we can add some more information about that. Or the other thing we can do is we can point, the newsletter that we send out has a lot of information on it. And we could point from the newsletter to a page, one of our pages, where we could explain it a little bit more. Because I think to try to put it in the newsletter might be tough and not, take away from other
There's
stuff.
already so many things.
Yeah.
But I would say the newsletter reaches more people than it.
Right, so we can make a reference to it. What happens if the Shakespeare becomes exempt? What does that mean to Garrison? Go to the Garrison website to find out.
I like that.
Yeah.
Good marketing there. But does anyone else have any thoughts or questions on this in terms of what they've been hearing in the community? I do agree. I don't like the rhetoric that somehow the Garrison children, it's incorrect. We're not losing out on anything.
Have you seen that in print anywhere?
Yes.
I wonder if it's in print, if it could be a clarification to the newspaper. This is a disqualification.
Well, I don't think I've seen it in print.
Well, it's opinion
Okay,
pieces.
it's
not
an article.
It's not
It's not
the
an
way.
article,
Okay.
but I do know there's also a lot of ads being taken out in the local papers supporting students will lose out.
As long as as long as our students and families know, they will not.
That's important.
Right, yeah.
There's two, I think, to engage.
I would just say, as long as we're gonna take the opportunity to educate, create a page about this, it might just be helpful to also address, how town property appraisals, property value appraisals go into that, and if there are new taxable properties, all those kind of issues, which I do think, that comes up semi-regularly where people don't understand how that affects everything. So just, let that more to your plate.
Yeah, well, we did a great Q&A essentially a couple years ago when we were having trouble with the budget. And maybe that's just a good practice to get into to make sure that we have all these questions that are always having sort of Q&A, whether it's insert or link to the website for commonly asked questions that we're hearing.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for bringing it up. Do you have any other
Yeah.
questions or thoughts on the budget? We're going to approve it tonight, so this is our last chance. Once it's approved, this is
We're approving. Okay, then I have another one.
yeah, go for it.
I don't know if we're reviewing fully approved.
This is it.
There's one line that was on a slide for 20K for site items. And I didn't realize that we ever finalized
Okay.
that. I didn't know that was,
Oh, for transportation.
yeah.
So, I mean, Rob, you want to speak to this, or I can, like a little bit, what we talked about in finance was moving I was the transportation coordinator. I know Joe's been doing it currently, taking that stipend out and putting it as a real position so that it is not all on Joe's plate.
Yeah.
Uh,
That was, I mean, of course, I don't want anything else on Joe's plate, but it was more like the discordant amounts that I remember talking about, that I just didn't realize it was in there.
Yeah, well, to speak a little bit more, that there is $20,000 stipend added to the budget. In analyzing Joe's many hats and responsibilities, which we talk about frequently, and considering that in the year ahead, for example, if the budget's approved, there's a gymnasium floor project, there's a roofing project. We still have to finish up the electric water heater project. So with our previous capital project, we had a project manager attached to that. But for these smaller projects, it will be Joe and our staff here. So the day-to-day transportation, there are a lot of things where maybe there's an early dismissal at one of our partner high schools, or BOCES is delayed, and it requires, in some cases, literally walking out to the buses, because I've done, when Joe was busy, a few times I stepped in and speaking to each individual bus driver, then going back to the main office and asking Mrs. Big to call parents. And sometimes it'll take an hour, 2 hours. So we're thinking someone like boots on the ground who can deal with a lot of that, provide better customer service to our parents, make changes, coordinate field trips, things like that. It takes some things off Joe's plate and frees him up to focus on some of these bigger projects in the year ahead. Was the thinking behind it.
But I think, is your question, is this amount reasonable for this position, or is the position reasonable? Because those are two different questions.
It just seems
Yes.
like
It's a big jump up
Quite a
from what we
jump.
were giving Joe essentially to do this in addition to everything else. And I see that, and I would be curious if others have that thought. I think one of the things we were looking at with this, if we open this up and list this is going to be a posted position, correct?
Yes.
And it was, are we going to attract anyone for a stipended position who would maybe retire in the community as a stipended position? One of the things I like about the stipended position is it doesn't add another healthcare benefit and headcount and retirement benefit to us going forward. But that's open for the board. If 20,000 isn't the amount we're comfortable with, we should have that discussion tonight.
I'm comfortable with the 20,000, and I think we saw with the redoing of the routes this at the beginning of this past school year that it certainly is a significant time commitment. I think, and given where we are budgetarily at the moment, I feel relatively comfortable with that amount. I think we looked at some of the comps in terms of what overall compensation would be, and that was, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what that amount was based on. Is that correct?
Yes. Well, the idea is, in Garrison, because of our size, we do have a number of stipends that we offer employees. If one of our own employees were to receive the stipend, the total compensation would be very comparable, and I think that's what you're referring to. The only other thing I will mention too is that important consideration is we are going out to bid for transportation. So that transition may be challenging.
And if we don't get the same contractor, we might have a different kind of result.
That would mean we have bus drivers too for all of our
Good.
routes as well.
Yes.
So having someone in this role. The other thing I would emphasize is, Sarah's has a lot of advantages to doing it as a stipend and not creating a permanent full-time position. The other thing is, if we don't think the value is there, the following year it could be eliminated. You're not locked into it for multi-years. It's a year-to-year stipend. So it's just two more considerations.
Does anybody think that 20,000 is excessive for this responsibility?
I was gonna say, I mean, it's an everyday responsibility when kids are in school, and even when kids are not in school. And I would be interested for any stipend that we offer, to get a ballpark figure of how many hours the person who gets that stipend is spending to make sure that we are compensating appropriately.
Yes. I'm not sure we have a mechanism currently.
We can ask
We
people
should
to just
track it, yeah.
track it, even if you just track it for 2 months, just to get a sense over the course of the year. I mean, is this 400 hours? Is it 400 hours to get this done, or is it 40 hours?
We don't wait till they're drowning in work.
Right, exactly. So yeah. I'm thinking it's not enough.
Any other thoughts? Are you comfortable with the 20,000 moving forward?
I think not saying with the budget for that.
Okay. I do think as a stipend, we can continue to reevaluate it as needed. And I'd be curious to see what response we get when that goes too. Because in likelihood, we might, it might go to somebody on staff, it might,
Hopefully, yeah, they're familiar with what's going on.
yes.
Joe did a great job.
Thank you.
Everything else. And do I have any other, all right, so it sounds like we're comfortable on that. Thank you for bringing that up. Do I have any other, this is our last sort of questions, thoughts, any other questions? It's an exciting moment to finalize it. So I'll make sure we get it right here. So, all right, I'm gonna go ahead and keep this moving up, so we're not here all night. Enjoy. Thank you, Joe, for the presentation. Cheers. Okay. So now we move on to the adoption of the proposed 2024-2025 school budget and approval of the property tax report card. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby adopts a budget of $13,369,573 for school district purposes for the school year commencing on July 1, 2024 through June 30th, 2025, to be presented for voter consideration at the annual meeting of the district on May 21st, 2024. And be it further resolved that the board hereby approves the 2024-2025 property tax report card as presented. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Great. All right. All in favor, please
Wait,
say.
are we gonna talk about the report card?
Oh, sure, we can talk about our report card. Absolutely. Any questions on our property tax report card?
Sorry.
No, go for it. Do you have a question?
So there's a lot, there's a couple other reserve lines, repair, workers' comp, reserve for tax reduction. We're not putting anything in any of those. It's just that we don't really need them. I've never actually really.
Yeah, so if you look at there's a column that says March of 2024, and there's a June of 2024 column, and you see that some of those numbers are different as you go down. So
Some of them are blank.
well, some of them, if we don't have a reserve for that, it's blank.
We don't have a workers' compensation.
Or repair or reserve, yeah, there's a bunch we don't have.
There's a number that on there that we don't actually have. So the ones that we do have, if we're making any changes, you'll see the change between the current amount, the March 31st amount, and the June.
So to determine the change, is that like maxing it out so we could really make use of all the extra money? Yeah.
So what's in there is we had a reserve plan that was developed in, I think, 2021.
Was that following, we did the reserve plan following the internal audit that we requested?
Yeah. And in there was targets associated with it. So the ERS one is at the target. So that's one of the ones that changed the most. And then the other ones, there isn't necessarily a target. It says as available or as required, but that specific one is at the target.
Some of them, for example, like tax assuring has a formula that we need to use in order to be accurate.
Well, we're supposed to use the amount that's outstanding as possible and use that for the basis.
Do we have any currently outstanding tax assuring claims?
Not to the level of some of the private, like the change to the golf course, that we don't have anything that's that size that I know of at the current moment.
All of these changes, though, will go to finance committee and then be recommended back in June, once we have a clearer picture of where we stand.
Yeah, this is a possible. This isn't guaranteed that's what it's gonna be. You're estimating what you think it's gonna be for June.
And is the reason we don't have like a repair reserve, is that because can we get a repair reserve?
Yes,
Is that something that we come through finance?
yes, the difficulty with some of that is that you have to ask for permission from the public to put it in, and you have to ask for the permission from the public to take it out. So it's not very, it's one of the hardest reserves to use. Gotcha.
As opposed to, for example, we're doing repairs on the roof, but we can use capital money to do that.
Yeah, we have in the budget, there's a transfer to the capital fund. So essentially you have budgeted money in your budget that's going to be used for capital expenses. So you're booking that as transfer to other funds at the very bottom of the budget. That's the last line. So then that gets into your capital fund and it's spent that way.
And is that different than, so that's different than a repair fund because we have to get our approval to put in and to take out. Yes. With capital, we just.
If we're doing it in our budget, we're getting approval from the public, the budget to do it. So we're getting permission to do it. And that's, you get the budget that way. And do it.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, because we're still, even after the transfers into reserve, we're still going to be probably over the 4% reserve threshold, right?
We might be. We'll have to see as we get closer. I think this gets us closer to the 4% that we ended up last year. But yeah, I think we still probably will be.
But so would it make sense at this point to think about other reserves, trying to.
I think
other
that's a
reserve funds?
finance committee to discuss, and if, for example, if facilities does want to recommend one, look and look at it, but, not.
Yeah.
Great. Do you have any other questions on the property tax report card? Okay. So I read it. We have a motion, right? We're good. We're gonna move to a vote unless there's any other questions or comments. Great. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays, abstentions. Thank you. And we have a budget 2024-2025. Next, we have the approval of propositions to appear on the ballot of the annual meeting of May 21st, 2024. Just before I start, may I read the recommended action? The propositions are listed here as well. They're able to be public. Do you need me to read them?
Yeah.
Thank you. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby authorizes the following propositions to be placed on the ballot for voter consideration at the annual meeting of the district on May 21st, 2024. May I have a motion, please?
So
You have any questions regarding the propositions or comments at this time? The first one is budget. The other, there are two here, proposition 2 and 3, that give us the ability, does not mean we have to do it, the ability for us to enter into a contract with both Haldane and Highland Falls. We have put these on in the past, and currently have contracts with these districts, which we are looking to extend, and we're going to discuss the Haldane one again later. But it just allows us to do it. We need voter authorization because it's greater than a year. And then proposition 4 was discussed during the budget presentation. Any further questions?
Do we not need one for Putnam Valley?
So Putnam Valley we did last year. The reason we're doing them every 2 years is to ensure that we're covering a class
Right.
as they spend 4 years there, so that we always have them covered under a contract. We don't send kids off, not what we do. That's my general line.
On election day, can we have a nice Q&A or informational board explaining all of this?
Or like we do every year.
Yeah, or a page on the website.
The board that we did last year, right, as you walk in, that's right. That was great. All right, if no other questions or comments, I'm going to go ahead and move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nay, abstention. Thank you. We now come to our first public comment. Public comment is intended for members of the community to speak openly and voice concerns. In accordance with policy 1510 of the Garrison Union Free School District, any person wishing to speak shall comply with all provisions of this policy. Comments about specific school personnel or individual students is a violation of board policy. Concerns regarding students or personnel should be discussed privately with the superintendent or appropriate administrator. Comments should be limited to 3 minutes, and speakers are asked to conduct themselves in a respectful manner. The board will listen to comments but will not engage in dialogue. Any necessary follow-up will be noted and provided through the appropriate channel. Members of the public wishing to comment during board meetings are asked to place their name and town of residence on the sign-in sheet. Commenters will be invited to the podium to address the board. I don't have anyone signed up. If anyone wishes to speak, public comment is open. I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. Keep us moving. We do have another public comment section later in the meeting if anyone changes their mind. Moving on to accept the minutes. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District does hereby accept the minutes of the regular business meeting of March 13, 2024 as presented. May I have a motion, please? Second. Thank you. Do I have any questions or comments on the minutes as presented, please? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays, abstention. Next, we come to committee reports. I'll start first with the audit committee report. The audit committee met this evening briefly. We've had both our board members and our community member present. We met to discuss the district's response, which Mr. Yack crafted for us, to the state comptroller's audit regarding technology. This item will then be, we're going to send it out. You'll see it on Friday when the next agenda for next week is posted, so the whole board can review it. Good. Great. Any questions on the audit committee report? It's a brief meeting, and we look to meet again in June, where we'll kick off the audit of this year. Okay. Next, facilities committee report. Dan?
Yep. So the facilities committee met in March. We had 2 community members present, as well as board members. A lot of what we talked about was addressed in the budget presentation. We are transferring funds to the capital reserve to cover the gym roof. We're covering the gym floor and other items that we talked about there. We also talked about some plans for the future, including we know that we have another roof that is going to need to be addressed in the next year or two. And we talked about some of the other priority, non-priority items, like potentially exploring bathroom options for the school forest and what that would look like. Addressing concerns about fields, those are not part of the near-term plan, but they, we discussed, what might need to happen to get us to a position where we could think about them practically. We discussed the grant that we're getting, the CREST grant, and that the field in the back has been seeded. Yes, which is good news for everybody.
Any questions for Dan?
You also got to experience the knockdown.
We did, yes. We don't need to experience that, but
Okay. I have one question. Not about the lockdown, but when you say fields, you're talking about across the street fields? The
Yes.
ones that are
yeah,
very water filled?
we've talked about, particularly with the community members, concerns about water on the playing field. And, we think what came out of the conversation was that while we have these, obviously, priority facilities issues that need to be addressed, like leaking roofs, how can we start to think concretely about, just developing, getting enough information as a committee that we could think seriously about, how would we get funds for that? How would we, what would the expense look like? What would, how would we bid that out? Those types of things. So nothing concrete, just, talking about it and trying to think about what those items are that are, most important to the community or to the district.
Thank you. questions, I'm going to go ahead and go back to the policy committee report. Courtney?
Thanks. Policy committee met last week and for primarily the objective to review two potential new policies, one regarding the admission of foreign exchange students and another policy in development of anti-nepotism hiring policy. Both are on, we are not doing a first reading tonight, which we were going to look at the foreign exchange student policy. The language as the policy is written was given to us by our legal counsel, but we have further questions and clarifications. So we decided to pull it for tonight so that we could go back to the lawyers, get proper language and present it to the board for a full review. And I'm optimistic that we can get it onto next Tuesday's agenda so that it can get moved.
In the back of the room. Hopefully, that's going to press upon her that we would really like to see a quick review of.
Perhaps her ears are burning. And other than that, I think we will look forward to our next meeting in May.
Great. Any other information do you need from the board at this time, or do you want to wait?
I think we'll wait to have
legal review.
to have our questions, our initial questions answered before we come to the board with seeking.
Yes. Great, thank you. Do you have any other questions for Courtney and the policy committee? Great, thank you. Move on to the Haldane liaison update from Kent.
Yes. So I was invited to the Haldane board meeting last night as part of a discussion they had about the long-term agreement we proposed to them, a 5-year high school tuition agreement similar to what we did with Putnam Valley last year, what we're working on with balls that we'd like to put on the ballot. They were all very clear about their desire to keep Garrison students at Haldane. Very effusive of praise of all of our students, what they bring to the school. One board member took the words out of my mouth and was just talking about how our students give them the ability to have more academic programming, athletic success, and we're really a big part of that school and all the great things that they're doing. So that was great to hear. There is some hesitancy among some of the board members about this tuition rate lock-in specifically. So the meeting did not end in a consensus to approve what we've asked them to approve. I explained that it's really our desire to create a commitment to us and to lock it in for our students and our families well in advance so that kids in 6th and 7th grade know what their options are as they approach high school. I think we've talked about it a little bit, but they're playing modified sports with Haldane kids. These kids they might get their high school choice in the fall of their 8th grade year, but they know where they're going to high school well before that. So part of the reason, not only financially, is that we want to give families and kids peace of mind with that choice and that they have plenty of time to. So with that hesitancy to lock into the rate though, something that I mentioned in the meeting last night, and I wanted to get feedback from this board on was a bit of modification to that locked-in 5-year contract with the escalator from 17.1 this year up 2%.
It's 16,825 this year, going up to 17,160.
So 17.1 next year and 2%.
It would
for
be 2%.
CPI going forward. I thought it might make sense to offer them the ability to opt out of the deal, to propose this deal for 5 years, but then give them the ability to opt out of the contract if they feel that they need to raise tuition or have that discussion, have that negotiation in the future. However, with the caveat that we'd like a 2-year notice to do that, just so that we can make sure that kids who are in 6th and 7th grade now know exactly where their high school choices are, and we have plenty of time to adjust should we need to do that.
And what was the reaction?
I didn't propose it specifically. I kind of mentioned it in the discussion, maybe we could think about an opt-out, but I couldn't represent that our board was offering that to them since we haven't discussed it yet. But I certainly think that might be a way to approach this. That way we have the peace of mind to say, we're locked in. They have the peace of mind to say, you know what, if something catastrophic happens or they feel the need to change the tuition structure, that they have the ability to do it. They're not locked in for 5 years.
It's a sense that the refusal to sort of look at it in these 5-year increments with 2% because they're worried about, having a major financial shift over there.
I wouldn't say there's huge consensus among the board on why they're hesitating to do that. I think that some board members have thoughts they just don't want to be locked into a rate. You know, others seem okay with the rate. But I don't feel like there's really any, you know, dividing lines of porn. It's just kind of I don't think there's a huge momentum to do what we want them to do, what we were asking them to do, locking in for 5 years. There's definitely opposition for 5 years. So this is an alternative that might be acceptable.
But there's no pushback in any of the discussions that, because our current contract does lock them in for the 5 years in terms of the students who we have a rate for. So that rate escalates.
Right.
I
think that's fine.
every
I
year.
think what
So they're not
they're-
looking to change the rate for the juniors
No,
and seniors.
no, they very much were on board with the idea that it starts there, that they're locked in.
They're locked in.
There's no discussion about that. I think it's more just the ongoing new classes that come in and rate that's set. So, you know, I think that it might make sense for us to propose that to them and get their reaction on it. They understand we're putting it on the ballot and that we are asking them to consider this in a manner more quickly than maybe they're able to do, but certainly it'd be helpful if we all were on board with this, go back to them and see if that's acceptable.
I love a rate for the 7th grade class.
Yeah, I mean, that's,
I mean, there weren't any numbers discussed or any
No.
mention of what they may.
and it's not, there's nothing specific. I think it's just more of it's just a hesitancy to lock in, you know, and you know, flexibility is great. But in this case, I think just for the sake of our families, for our economic situation here, at least having a 2-year lock so that the kids who are in middle school now, there's no mystery of where they can go. So it really work out well for us.
So how would that differ than from the other 2 contracts? We have 5-year.
We have
Contracts that we
5-year contracts that we renew every 2 years to we looked at this. We have to ensure that after 2 years, we continue to make sure we're covering everyone who's currently there and that we're offering it backwards so that people know. So we kind of have I would say we have almost overlapping contracts that cover this group cohort, and then in 2 years, the next contract starts cover them. But they all build in that 2% escalator off that, or the NRT rate. The NRT rate is less, we pay the NRT rate, or go over the NRT rate.
So I guess I'm just confused how the opt-out would work if they're already agreeing to keep the rates the same for the students who have already entered. What would they be opting out of? What would their option to opt out of look like?
The next class would not have that 2% escalator. It would be whatever which they decide to say.
I think what we'd be looking at, give me just a second, because we had it in the contract in the last meeting.
So basically right now, we have it locked in for the 8th graders that are going next year. But we don't have any rate for the 7th graders now. Like they could come back to us and say, which they would never do, but they could come back to us and say it's going to be 50,000 per student.
They can't.
Well,
Legally.
Legally, when you can go to their NRT.
They
right?
go there and which they
which-
tried to do a few
right,
years ago,
but-
which is.
But we don't have any ability then. And we wouldn't know their NRT rate until our 7th graders would be in the middle of their freshman year. So we would have no ability to actually budget out their tuition. So that's part of it too, just not only the knowing in advance, but it's locking in that rate so that we have it before the fiscal year starts.
Because the rate is actually calculated after the whole school year is finished. It's actually a couple months after you submit your financials in September, and then in December from the prior year, in December, you know what the rate was for the year that you already paid. So what happens is then you either have an additional bill you have to pay if the rate went up above what you paid before, or you get a credit. And so that not knowing and the change in that number, which can change a lot. And we've had that experience even recently. That number can change a lot, and then it makes a big difference in how much tuition you pay.
Yeah, especially with the three schools that we work with are relatively small, Haldane being the smallest, but, you know, we were looking at the enrollment for the middle school for which the NRT rate is determined. And there are 10% differences over 5 years. Like it rolls pretty heavily when you have a small school, and it can really make a huge impact on the NRT rate.
That's one of my big concerns with energy. So I'm looking at the contract now, and under tuition charges, so we address in the year, and in subsequent years, tuition shall be calculated / negotiated in accordance with the following. For students in grades 9 through 12, tuition will increase by the CPI or 2%, whichever is less. For students entering grade 9, and this would be for 25, 26, that's correct on that school year, tuition will be negotiated by the parties. I'm wondering if that's the place right there we say, it'll go for students who will graduate in 25, 26, 26, 27, it'll be 2%. And then after that, we will, if they wish to renegotiate, we would like 2 years notice, like somewhere in there, maybe.
Do we already put any restrictions on those negotiations in the contract?
I think that's been part of the issue that we've had, is that there hasn't been a
Okay, so-
locked in time.
Yeah.
I'm just not seeing what the risk is on Haldane, where, I mean, it seems like we're the ones paying the tuition. We have all the financial exposure. I don't really even get what the concern is if we're renegotiating every 2 years.
So one of my concerns is, so if we negotiating every year, like last year we got a rate from them, I believe we did the amended agreement in September. Kids start touring in October. So Haldane was not an option for that class until September, until that agreement is in place. And again, we're starting the conversation now. We're a couple months into this conversation. We still don't have a rate.
Right. I mean, I get it from our
Yeah.
perspective. It doesn't seem like we are trying to restrict their ability to negotiate rates moving forward, really, right? Other than saying we want a 2-year period where it's,
Well, we know it's predictable.
yeah.
What is their NRT rate? It's high.
Their NRT rate is high and fluctuating right now.
Right, so they're a lot less than what we're paying, so it takes away their ability to say, we want you to give.
Which we
But we
had a
can't-
year where they did
We
that.
can't, I mean, that's huge risk for us.
Right.
Their estimated for this year is 18,952.
We're not that far off
So
than what we're paying.
It's a 6%.
3,000.
I mean, I guess, yes, you're right. For them, why want some?
I like your idea, Kevin.
But I do think that it's more of as a community, like giving our children the ability to plan ahead, not like if my son is in 7th grade and he wants to go home.
Yeah.
He plays baseball, but he plays baseball, all the sports with all those kids. If we don't get a deal, and then you go to a meeting in 8th grade and say, sorry, I do that.
Yeah.
That's part of, that's really what my biggest concern is. I feel like
Yeah.
we're gonna work together, we're gonna find a rate. They've always been good to us. They helped us out during the Corona period in a big way. So I'm not really concerned about that. It's more of just locking it in so that we can be consistently with our families and neighborhoods.
I will say, I watched the meeting last night, and I think they consistently said they can't imagine, or some board members said that they can't imagine not having Garrison students. If that's the case, if they're expecting this to happen, why can't we just set a rate? Or at least give us 2 years notice so that all our middle schoolers will know that it's an option for them. Coming to us in the fall and saying, well, this is what we decided, you need to pay us, I don't think works.
Yeah.
But if we get that discussion for our board to have, we feel that we can live with that. I just think that it really impacted our budget 2 years ago when they got the energy rate and pushed us towards the over.
And we've done some things that, like we've moved the date that students need to decide to the end of the year so that the districts can then take the money that we're going to give them in tuition and put that into the budget, which is, I think, it's not a huge amount. They're bigger districts than us and they have bigger budgets, but we're sending $1 million a year to Haldane. So that is not insignificant.
It's helpful all around.
Yeah.
It's helpful for us, for Joe to budget, and it's helpful for the other schools.
I like Ken's idea. I'm not sure how then we'll take it, because I do think some of the board members definitely sound like they want to continue to negotiate year to year, which is my other concern on this is that this is the conversation we have about housing for years, how much money do they want? And we don't talk about program, we don't talk about what they're offering. I'd love to start moving the conversation away from the tuition rate into something more exciting. And maybe if we're not doing this every year, every other meeting.
So just to be clear, the proposal that Haldane would be that the rates would be subject to a 2%.
It'd be the same, you'd say, we want a 5-year deal, just like Putnam Valley and Iowa Falls. We will add in an opt-out, a 2-year notice opt-out.
But so meaning if they want to raise the rates more than 2%, they give us 2 years.
2 years notice. And then we would run it by our legal counsel to see if we can, and have it drafted, it will then go to their legal counsel. I mean, this is a process. I recognize that it's not, it takes a while to get any contract drafted, especially when we're working with 2 legal departments, 2 boards. But this gives us more time and removes it, I think, from a yearly issue. And it would be more positive for both.
And then hopefully, the kids who enter 8th grade next year and the kids who enter 7th grade next year know exactly their options are.
Sarah, is there any precedent for moving the conversation from tuition to programming issues?
Well, it's not because I've been on the board, but I used to attend meetings, and Courtney, you guys might remember it. They used to come and do presentations, and it's something I'd like to see, because I know with O'Neill, for example, they come and do presentations and they bring their kids.
Or we go there.
Like I went this year to the joint meeting with O'Neill, and there were students there who actually shared really interesting, insightful feedback on their programming. I'd love, so we have had them in the past. This has dominated the conversation of recent years. So I think that would be something to move back to. Invite Putnam Valley as well. I know a lot of us just went on the tours and are pretty familiar with the curriculum, but many board members have not. So it'd be good to hear and start to hear from our students as to what their experience is and what can we do on our end in the middle school to help. It was just great. So are we all in agreement then?
If there's consensus on board, I'd love to pass the Sarah to this.
Yep, we'll make that happen. Just take it notes. Great. All right, we'll work with that. And then can we also ask Carl, would you be willing to call Bill and just communicate that this is coming? And I know we've already sent over 2 drafts that our council reviewed, but we would like to put a 3rd option out there for them.
Sure.
To see.
Call for tomorrow.
I think it's unrealistic to keep pressing the one to accept. Any other questions? Thank you, Kent, so much for taking another evening out to attend the housing meeting. Did you get to see their budget presentation and other fun stuff too?
They did not. They said there are no changes to the last time, so I had to go through. It was a incredibly efficient meeting, just over by 7:45.
I can deliver that for you.
Really had a lot. Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna keep this moving that. Sorry about that. We're not that fast here. We gotta have a party. So moving policy meeting, we're moving on to the personnel items on the consent agenda. Be it resolved, Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District, on the recommendation of the superintendent, hereby appoints Micah Hales Knowles to a 4-year. I did that right? No, excuse me. To a 4-year probationary appointment as a middle school English language arts teacher effective August 28th, 2024 through August 27th, 2028 in the tenure area of secondary English at an annual salary for the 2024-2025 school year consistent with MA Step 9 of the GTA bargaining unit agreement. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Carl.
Okay, I will just start by saying thank you, Mrs. May, for heading up a very comprehensive search process for our next middle school English teacher, grades 6, 7, and 8. There were 86 applicants. It was a very competitive pool. Ms. Sabik had a team of middle school colleagues. Also, our guidance counselor sat in. And they interviewed finalists, brought them back for demonstration lessons, writing samples, and then thorough vetting and pulling references. And it was unanimous that Micah was the choice for Garrison. Just to give you a bit of her background, she's an NYU graduate. She started her career in the publishing industry for about 4 years, and then went into the Teach for America program. Did her graduate work, got her teaching certification, and has been working about 13 years in Brooklyn, New York City Public Schools. And it seems like she just has an outstanding career, that they spoke so highly of her. She's done a lot of curriculum work, is team leader for her grade level, an instructional leader in that school, and she is relocating to Garrison. So our good fortune, because I kind of think she would have stayed in her school. She seems to love it so much. She's also a published author of a student novel, and her understanding of the writing process was really impressive. Excited to leverage that expertise. So I think this is a wonderful recommendation from our committee, and this is an egg. She is here tonight. We appreciate that.
I was sorry, I missed my extra name.
No, that's fine.
But I will turn it over to the board.
Do we have any further questions for Carl? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays? Abstention. Congratulations.
Yay, thank you so much. Very, very exciting. Thank you. Thrilled.
Oh,
But thrilled, really. Thank you.
Lights out.
Garrison, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Special energy saver life. All right, I'm gonna keep us moving. Move on to new business, approval of PNW BOE's cooperative bid participation 2024-2025. Be it resolved, the Garrison Union Free School District Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, agrees to participate with the school districts of the Putnam Northern Westchester Board of Cooperative Educational Services, Westchester and Putnam Counties, New York, adopting this in the joint bidding of the items listed in the table below, and be it further resolved that this resolution shall remain in effect until June 30th, 2025, and be it further resolved that it is agreed that the specifications as presented will be used, and that thus board agrees to bid its required amount of said commodities jointly with other participating school districts and Putnam Northern BOCES and the Putnam Northern Westchester Board of Cooperative Services for the recommendation of the Purchasing Steering Committee will be considered when this board acts on the purchase of said commodities.
I can explain what this is about.
Hold on, may I have a motion, please?
Are you gonna read all this?
No. For the public, there is a table of items that are put yes or no. May I have a motion? Thank you. Okay. Joe?
Yeah, so essentially what this is, BOCES, one of the things that they do is they do cooperative purchasing. That's what this is. So the BOCES will bid out for contract rates for all these items. That will allow us to meet our bidding requirements by using this cooperative bid. So it gives us the opportunity to access things that are competitively bid without having to do all that legwork ourselves directly, and it combines the purchasing power of all the school districts, and hopefully you get a better rate than if you were trying to do it all by yourself, going out with these things. And so we checked off all the items that we might use on here. We're not going to buy welding supplies, so we can check that.
Okay. Any questions for Joe? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays? Abstention.
I'm abstaining.
Public comment? I'm not going to read my paragraph again, but it still stands. Public comment is open. I have a second sheet right here. We'll move on to board member comment and other discussion. We begin with Jocelyn.
I'm gonna just say congrats to the 3 people, so that you all have to, I'll say ditto for all of you on your behalf, but congrats to Sarver, Dr. Sol.
David.
Yeah, I just want to say that I'm really happy that our search yielded Greg. And just to let people know that when we interviewed candidates, it was really impressive to hear him talk about what he's going to do, what he wants to do here. And we were not easy. We pushed him. And he really stood up well with that. Welcome.
Thank you, David. I don't think you've ever been easy on anyone. Jennifer.
So I'm glad that I was never interviewed by David. But I would just like to say ditto.
Dan.
Definitely ditto. As a new board member, it was definitely very instructive for me to be a part of the process. I thought it was very educational, and really quite inspiring to see the strength of candidates that we've received across the board, and particularly to hear about Dr. Stoll's incredible background, his history of innovation in his positions. So I think that, and particularly with Ms. Arbor's award, it's very inspiring for me as a board member. I mean, it's just also the parent, to be in a district that prioritizes these things, and that I think the board has created the space for us to really focus on program development, prioritizing really valuable educational programs, and putting forward a good budget that allows us to support all of those things. Says great things for the district and for the
Brittany.
I'm not nearly that eloquent tonight, so I'm going to say to Jocelyn and Dan that you get it done for, congratulations.
Again.
This ditto as well, but I just want to, Carl will get many of these, I'm sure, in the next couple months, but just thank Carl again for, clearly the school and the district, I think, is a great place. Greg stepping in, the opportunity to share his vision with us, but Carl, you put us on really good footing. Much appreciate all the job too.
I did all that. And also, it's been a while since we met, and I want to congratulate Aldine on a wonderful production of Chicago, which happened recently. We had some board members whose children participated. The boys basketball team on an amazing run to the championship. And from Putnam Valley, the girls basketball team made it to the Final Four as well. So congratulations to our high school partners on their accomplishment. Wow, that is all I have. So we're going to move ahead. So moving further to executive session. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby enters into executive session for the purpose of receiving legal counsel. May I have a motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nay. Abstention. Okay. Computers.